Hey guys, welcome back. A few things before we get started this evening. Don't forget to grab a ticket to the Secret Space Conference that is coming up May 2nd through the 5th. We're getting really excited about that. We got some roundtables coming up with some of the speakers. I really seriously can't wait. It's getting exciting. And I'm kind of getting nervous too. It's right around the corner. And I'm like, shit, I've never done this before, but I know we can pull it off. So grab a ticket if you want to join us. The tickets are available on the website, secretspaceconference.info, and live stream tickets are available if you can't make it. We have a lot of questions about all that stuff. And if you do have any questions, make sure you read the entire website first because I tried to put all of the details on there. So before you reach out and ask a question, make sure you read everything on the website first. So, guys, tonight we have a guest who I'm really excited to talk to. Eve Lorgen. So she's friends with James Bartley. And if you guys remember the episode with James where we talked about reptilians and all that stuff, this is going to be a similar conversation. But Eve has written 3 books: The Love Bite, Alien Interference, and Human Love Relationships, Elogis 2000, and The Dark Side of Cupid. So obviously it's kind of surrounding like a false twin flame idea. Twin flame idea is like very popular, I guess I should say, in the awakening and spiritual community. And while I do believe it is a real thing, there are ETs and entities, let's just say, who understand that it's a real thing also, and they take advantage of people who are looking for that connection. And so I'm going to turn it over to you, Eve, and kind of explain what the love bite is. That book in general, that's how I even found you. And I think I experienced something similar. So what happened to you? What happened to you? Obviously, you've had an experience that caused you to write that book. And can you just explain to our audience what all that is about?
I'll just go ahead and show you a picture of the book. This is the book called The Love Bite, Alien Interference in Human Love Relationships. And that actually rose out of doing research within the alien abduction phenomena that I was really interested in because I knew I had experiences in my own family. And so it really I didn't expect to find this really. So it wasn't until probably the mid 1990s, which is quite a while ago now when you think about it. This was when the late Dr. Karla Turner was on the lecture circuit in the UFO community, who did a lot of groundbreaking material that people weren't really willing to talk about openly because it delved into some of maybe the little more darker elements of the alien abduction and what milab phenomena, and also the involvement of like reptilian kinds of beings and the deceptions being played on people through reptilians and different beings posing as aliens and ET guides that were actually deceiving and doing some pretty bad things. So we actually could relate to a lot of it because in the experiences that I had, James Bartley, who was doing the group with me, and other people at the time, it brought back flashbacks of what we thought were dreams of things that involved milab and underground-based things that involved very humans and sometimes reptilians or different aliens that took different forms. So we really applauded Dr. Karla Turner's work. And then after she died in 1996, we got in close contact with Barbara Bartholic, who was the hypnotherapist that worked with Karla Turner to help do the regressions on some really amazing cases, alien abduction cases that had gone into depth and connected elements together that the other researchers really weren't putting together as relevant in terms of connections. So I got in contact with Barbie and worked with her personally over the years, as James did too. And so it was Barbara Bartholic who helped me understand not only the different things that happen in the alien abduction experience that we didn't really know, oh, these are just dreams, that we came to find out through working with each other in a support group and really connecting with other people who had experiences, that these things were relevant and they were actually part of the experience and they were part of some kind of military connection with certain alien groups. So that kind of launched the alien abduction support group thing that I started in California in San Diego County. And then during that support group, and this was after Dr. Karla Turner died, that at least 4 of us in the group, we had experiences that were related to what Barbie called the drama of the love obsession that was orchestrated by the alien beings or handlers in our particular experience that were actually orchestrating and setting up or creating interference patterns in our relationships that related to what Barbie had known about for decades, actually. And so it just happened that I was going through a situation and James had gone through and several people in the group. So I put together many case histories over the years of people who had those kinds of relationship setups where they felt it was orchestrated by the alien beings. And it was clear in a lot of those cases with how they basically witnessed and believed things to happen. So that was actually the first book. And I really think that these cases, when you think about it, it's actually hard to put together witness testimonies of things on that personal of a nature. And so it wasn't an easy thing. So even though there was 10 case histories, which would be 10 couples, that is just a small amount of people compared to all those who actually reported those things to me over the years.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's actually hard to do because there was a lot of interference. And really, the first thing I actually discovered doing alien abduction research, I actually started out doing articles on the fluorescence markings and the alien implant surgeries that Dr. Roger Lear did back in the mid-90s, and working with Daryl Sims. And so what I had found is when interviewing the people and wanting to discover more truth of our experiences, we started having what we called, interference, and lack of a better term, I just called it weird spiritual warfare detracting tactics it was as if there was a force acting behind us to prevent us from getting hypnotic regressions or speak more clearly about these things. So there was definitely something at work that didn't want us to come to the full truth of our experiences. And I think, this is like, they don't want the dark side being revealed about maybe security issues, probably related to the military or the human element working in conjunction with some of the other aliens that are like in the underground bases. And so I think some of those detracting efforts were security measures to keep a lid on that. But, people talk and they remember things that they're not supposed to remember. So we ended up discovering a lot about that. So
Right.
the whole love obsession thing could have actually been part of an interference pattern, where if somebody wanted to go get a hypnotic regression or go public with their story and they're in a marriage, then they get set up with another person. It turns into this big old drama thing, or it's a handler sent to neutralize the whistleblower or the abductee looking to seek truth, blah, blah, blah. So that's what really became the bulk of my book, but not all of it was, some kind of whistleblowing tactic. Some of them were genuine setups that had started with two, quote, abductees who had those histories from their early childhood and then set up and bonded with a particular person over the years, different times. And they meet later in adulthood when they would have that phenomenal deja vu and the synchronicities and a profound connection, like soul indwelling connections.
Mm-hmm.
And then that set off this whole drama. So that I thought was worth talking about. And I believe that many of the more well-read researchers at the time, such as Bud Hopkins and, even, the well-known ones who were considered more, legitimate researchers who got bigger readership or, the bigger names, they were kind of like putting a dampen on those weird things that were happening that Barbara Bartholic said, there's a whole lot going on underneath the surface that they're not talking about.
Well,
and
yeah, it's a real thing that you're absolutely right about everything you just said. And going back to when you started talking about how they like to pose as your guides sometimes, or a loved one, even in an astral experience and a dream experience. So you think you're having a dream or an astral experience with a loved one, let's say, and it could just be a reptilian in disguise or whatever the case may be. That's number one. Number two, the possibility that once they've decided to use you, I should say, there's nothing out of the realm of possibility, as far as nothing is off the books, as far as they can give you false synchronicities. they can send healers and readers your way and give you these like, oh, this person is your twin flame, or this person is this, and it's actually not the case at all. And it really makes you distrust like all of everything that's happening with this awakening. But that really, you shouldn't let it take you back like that. Just use it as a lesson and a stepping stone.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually what we discovered, and that Barbara Bartholic and Dr. Karla Turner really wanted to bring to the community was, people were at that time, basically saying that there was no such thing as reptilians and all these negative experiences are really the military and not the aliens. But so many cases they were, where an entity would show up as their favorite lover. And it could be like their husband, or it could be, a movie star or entertainer. And then it would be like a shape-shifting reptilian kind of thing. Or that would be the operating screen used while they were actually bonding you to someone else. And there's actually a case in the book in the Love Bite book, where that happened, where the woman thought she was with her husband and she was really with an alien, a reptilian. And different things like that would happen actually quite a bit.
Yeah.
So the whole spirit guide thing is pretty big. And in the Ted Rice case, and I don't know, maybe you spoke about this with James Bartley, because this was a book. It was actually an entire book written by Dr. Karla Turner called Masquerade of Angels. And this was about just the Ted Rice case, what he discovered in his childhood. Anyway, long story short, not only did he have, many alien abductions and a cloning experience, and just off the top stuff that was very scary, actually. People don't want to read about those kind of things, but he had a setup with a woman in his teenage years, who was a woman he went to junior high school with. And so he was set up with a woman. And later in life, he was led to use his psychic abilities and his spirit guide things, and, to be a light worker. And then he discovered that he was actually misled by a primary reptilian handler that was acting as a spirit guide. And that when he would involve himself with these other, quote, light workers in the channeling communities, their spirit guides would tell him, oh no, don't go to those bad memories, that's being negative, and it's all for your spiritual enlightenment. And their guides would encourage him to deflect away from finding out the truth of his experiences, because, well, that was just too negative. And so this calls into question what you just mentioned, was that can we always trust when some psychic or a tarot reader or a channeler or a spirit guide tells you, oh, well, you're going to meet your twin flame, and, you should be doing this. And, well, that's being fear-based. You should not do this. And then question later down the road, where did it lead you to? And it could have led you to like a love bite from hell, which I suppose we can all learn from our experiences in a positive way if that's our intention. But I've seen people be misled and misdirected by spirit guides and different things, which was only later kind of realized down the road that this was being hijacked by some kind of, quote, hyperdimensional interference.
Right. Like Ivan Teller, he's a channeler, and we had him on the show and we asked him about his spirit guides. He's like, oh, I fired him. Yeah. He's like, because he realized that was happening to him. And that's exactly what he said. He goes, I fired him. I don't need that.
We're like, I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, he said they led him into a sticky situation, basically, kind of like, what we all experience. But he had to force out. I don't know. He just knew to fire him. He's like, I never even thought about that. I thought you were like stuck with your guides. He's like, no, next. So you talked about the military aspect of this, going back to early age, childhood, where I guess you could say that children can be trauma bonded, if that's one way of putting it. So they're put together at a young age. This way, when they finally meet, people think it's like the twin flame or the divine counterpart, but they're just having that recognition from being paired as a child. And
Yes.
Who knows, they might hit it off in the future or they might not, but it's tricky because you don't really know. And if you don't have an awareness of the programs or that you were even in a program, it gets really confusing.
Yeah. In fact, that happened to me, and it happened to me people that I know, and some of the MyLab programs, I suppose this could happen with strict alien contact, alien abduction, where they don't seem to have an interaction or be, quote, in a project where the military are in liaison with them. But I've seen this a lot with what we call we called them milabs, and then we started calling them a super soldier project, and then they started talking about the SSP, secret space program. But within these, I actually heard about this initially from someone in a satanic ritual abuse organized crime family, where they use certain kinds of rituals, black magic and twinning with different altars created through trauma in an SRA kind of way to create twinned altars, and that they would be used in a certain capacity where an alter personality of one person is with an alter personality of another, but only in certain circumstances where both those alters are acting in the other environment, whatever that operation is, then they have this strong connection. So I think an adaptation of that is happening within the military programs, where they just utilize some of those same initial ways to do things, like the ancient black magic practices, actually. And then they just step it up a notch with however technologies that they've been able to acquire, sometimes through aliens, to set people up. And so they do this in my lab operations. That, in fact, that was one of the 4 reasons that I had decided was, what was the reason why they were doing these, quote, love bite setups or interferences. And of course, one of the reasons was they will set people up who are both project people in a MyLab project or SSP, since that seems to be the term everybody's using. But they're not always a 20 and back kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm. So, right, exactly.
So one of the things that they did was, if they set you up and they know whether it's astrological, personality profile, energetic signature, they will know. And then they could probably enhance it with programming and amplification of your sexual energies, which they can do. And then they bond you with someone who you have a really good, I call it the tantric connection, where when you're with a certain person, the connection is so profound that your abilities are amplified together, and then on ops, and then let's say the psychic abilities are amplified. And then if you're a twinned pair with someone, these things were reported to me. Maybe now people are talking about them behind the scenes, but they would be used together, where one person would acquire intelligence, for example, on a secret something. And that was their task, to go and get intelligence gathering of a secret thing, and then bring it back to their partner and bring it back to the handler or the programmer, or whoever is wanting the information. Let's say you're sent on a spy operation. And so you get the information through some means. A lot of times it's sexual means to extract information, or telepathically, you just get it out of their mind through sexual connection. And then you get the information, you put it back into the mind of your partner, who then retrieves it telepathically, like mind files. And then you're able to get the information to the appropriate person who's handling that couple. So there's like really advanced ways and means of doing things that are just blow you away. But I discovered this kind of accidentally when I started interviewing people and then finding out we had these abilities.
Well, I think that's the only way to discover this, is if it's happening to you. You're never going to learn about it. You're not going to, now, you can start reading about it, but it's just like everything. It's not real until it happens to you. It's almost unbelievable in some aspects.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's very true. And it's so confusing, because like we're all looking for that, right? Everybody's looking for that connection. So when you finally find it, yes. In a way, we should be thanking them, because it's a lot easier than using a dating app. They're already putting you together.
Yeah. Just you got to be careful.
Right, you're getting like the perfect match, but unfortunately, it's like a form of loose farming, or one person loves the other person, but it's not reciprocated, and then that person loves somebody else, it's not reciprocated, and it creates trauma, and it's like a loose farming thing. And that's they have the ability to do that also, and it gets very confusing.
Yeah, in fact, that was a good question to even ask that because initially in the abduction phenomena and the research, they would talk a lot about how they would pair someone so they would have a hybrid child. Maybe the hybrid child was with like an alien or someone they chose for them, and there was an issue of that sexual interaction. But that wasn't always the case with a love bite setup. It wasn't for the purpose of having a child or even getting the woman pregnant and then taking that baby and putting it up on the ship in a tank kind of thing. So that's unfortunate. It's what I found throughout all this, though, is sometimes we would have this powerful connection, and we could have a powerful connection with someone that has been, let's say, set up with us in the projects. And I know that I heard, what's his name? The German guy, Johann Fritz, talk about this, and some of I don't even know if it was on your show, actually, but he talked about how they twin people with their twin flame in some of these projects. And right. I believe that's true. But what happens is, let's say one person is not fully awakened or have their memories come back from being in a project. And if they have a connection with someone who's in the project but hasn't awakened or done their therapy work or their regressions and their memory retrieval and the trauma, then that relationship won't work out because of the trauma. So it will be like, unresolved trauma problems in a relationship. But theoretically, I suppose if both people really worked on their trauma and they became to understand themselves, then they could have that kind of powerful connection. It's just, it never seemed to happen that way in the people that had come to me.
Right. I think anything is possible. Like, just if you find yourself in a situation, it's like, like maybe it was somehow set up at a young age and whatever, maybe it's not purely organic, but at the same time, you might be able to work with that person, and it might end up being a beautiful thing. You never know. But there's also there's a movie called American Ultra. Have either of you guys seen that movie?
No. American Ultra?
American Ultra. It's like,
wait a minute, that's the MK Ultra guy, right?
Right. Yeah. So he's like a super soldier who's mind wiped and then just placed into society, and he's given a normal life and false memories of his life on Earth, and then he's sent a handler, which is a girl that he falls in love with. And so, and then what happens is he gets activated and starts getting his memories back and remembers what he was doing in the programs and all these abilities he had. And then he finds out that she was sent to him as a handler, and she was, never really in love with him. So it was all fake, and it wasn't even her real name or whatever. But they end up spoiler alert, they end up falling in love and sail off into the sunset anyway. But what's really interesting is the guy who runs that. It's a CIA. It's like a black project, actually, within the CIA. It's a group that's developing these super soldiers. But the guy who runs it, his name is Kruger, and that's Kruger. That's who Johann Fritz and all these guys talk about, Kruger and the SSP. And I saw that and I heard that. I'm like, okay, they're probably disclosing an absolute real program in this movie. And I know that was a little tangent, but it's something else to think about that's possible.
Yes. In fact, that's more of an overt thing. And I think that happens. And in fact, the movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, remember the original
Total Recall.
Total Recall.
I was just going to say
he's sent, and then the woman is, his handler, and it's the wife, and then he finds out. But a lot of times in those movies, they make it like the love bite handler is fully aware of what they're doing. And in some cases, I think more in the alphabet soup agency associated programs, you might see more of that where the person, knows they're a handler handling somebody.
Right.
But what I found is that there's all these other levels of what I call an interdimensional handling, where if someone has not fully recovered from their mind control programming, their program itself may be to handle someone inadvertently through the different programs they have, or the entities working through them that are actually compelling them to handle another person. And so,
a good handler doesn't know that they're a handler.
Exactly. And it's a interdimensionally compelled and handled situation, and this is something that I wrote more about in the Dark Side of Cupid, where some of these love bite setups, where we called it the third party entity or the overshadowing entity that was kind of like really working behind the scenes to manipulate the situation. And it could be even a spirit guide kind of situation where they're actually working in ways to handle and corral that person into a particular relationship or belief system or job or something. So that's clear that it's much more subtle and insidious sometimes, which would make it sound really paranoid. Like you can't be like accusing people of like, being handlers all over the place. But I think there are signs of that happening certainly within the love bite kind of situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's this is, if you really, this is like next level stuff. Like it really is. It really takes like years of being into your awakening to even believe in half of this stuff in the first place. Then to accept it as a reality is an entirely different thing. And then when it happens to you, it's like, and let's just say a year goes by and you realize what's been going on, and then you like realize that you've been duped in a way. It can totally, either you can hit rock bottom or you could bounce back from that, but it's going to make you stronger than ever. And I just think it's one of the most fascinating things to me. So in your own experiences, would you feel comfortable sharing any of those?
There's so many. When I look back in my own experiences of the family, I realized later that my belief is that it came from either one or both sides of the family. In terms of, we look at lineage, often if someone has alien encounters where these beings are interacting through the generations, sometimes it's through, let's say, the mother's line or the father's line, sometimes it's both. But I felt like it was primarily through, let's say, the maternal line, although it may be the father's line. But what happened is that it was already operating on a maternal line long before she met what was actually a love bite setup with her husband, who, of course, was my father. And then he got involved with Alphabet Soup, Lockheed Martin, in a high clearance security position, and joined the Freemasons and raised himself up to 33rd degree, that I found out later. And then it was as if the involvement in the Freemasons and that narcissistic personality, which he was a narcissist who was easily manipulated by dark forces once you get in Freemason, just completely hosted, right? Mm-hmm. So that actually enabled me to be in a project because of the bloodline of the mother, and then the accessing through the father, who got involved in an alphabet soup agency, which then used that particular quality, which was already going on, I think, for generations. So it's not just a military thing. There's a bloodline thing. That's what I think happened in my family.
Oh, okay.
So, and I think there was actually both going on, where there was something good, right, and operational through a maternal bloodline that had to do with qualities and maybe, I don't want to call it psychic gifts or spiritual gifts, but I think now when I look back, they look to take those qualities and then hijack them with somebody who's already easily manipulated to be used. It's like it opens up an access doorway for permission, so that the issue of the children of that pair can be used in a secret project. So that's what I think happened to me. And and that's why I wanted to learn more about that. And I didn't even know of that involvement until many years later. And I thought it was just like an alien thing and remembering abduction kinds of things, but I thought they were dreams. And then I discovered later that was classic, what Bud Hopkins was writing about, and, many of these other researchers. And then as I learned, I discovered more in my own family and my own life.
Right.
With somebody. Yeah.
Have you seen the most recent Matrix movie, the newest one that a lot of people didn't like? That kind of depicts exactly what you're talking about. There's two people who are Neo and Trinity, they've been basically memory wiped and put into a matrix, and then they don't really remember each other, and then they recognize each other, but they don't know how. The whole story. And then it's finally, whenever the connection is made, that they realize what's going on, and the movie just blossoms from there. But to me, that was like, it's almost a disclosure of what they're actually doing. I don't think people are aware of it, and they don't see it as disclosure. Just like, oh, this movie sucks.
Yes, it just kind of, this has been going on for so long. And I remember years ago when we first started discovering, love bite setups and people we're involved with and the stories we got, and they ended up on X-File episodes. I mean, with specificity, with things that I knew the people involved with, that it was beyond a doubt that they were like spying on like MUFON meetings and abductee support group meetings and God knows what. But a lot of these ended up in X-File episodes, and they were basically, I think, stealing and spying on some of these people to the point of like, this was beyond chance. And even in cases in my book, but maybe I'm making something of it, but I just think these things have been going on for a long time and that people are just starting to awaken.
So you mean like a person is infiltrating a MUFON meeting or whatever, or an entity? Or
you mean they would probably send screenwriters to go and infiltrate MUFON meetings and abductee meetings, and it wouldn't go past with people who are already like Illuminati family people involved in the movie industry. We already know that, right? Mm-hmm. Like the Illuminati families are in the entertainment industry, and everything's actually orchestrated through bloodline groups anyway. So I think a lot of disclosure happens through certain kinds of movies or shows where they actually have the core of a true story that they got through their, intel operations, and then they'll put it out there in a form where they could disclose it. That only people who were really the people involved know, and it's beyond a shadow of a doubt. But they more often than not do a combination type of situation where they gather a cluster of facts and then put it into one personality in the movie. But there's many things that I know that have been taken directly from research.
Right. Right.
And it's frustrating because, there's people making millions on things basically through theft, if you ask me.
Well, yeah, but then that's their own karma. It's fine. Like I'd rather have my own abundance and not be rich than be rich and have nothing, what's it say? I feel sorry for my friend. The only thing he has is money. Like,
I feel sorry for people that all they have is money.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
And especially the ones that have like sold their souls for that. Like that's the worst situation you can be in my opinion. Which is basically most of Hollywood and most of the most famous and rich people on the planet. They've all sold their souls to the dark, basically, and then they're trapped at that point. It's like
trapped and blackmailed.
Yeah, and they're gonna have a lot. I mean, the entire dark forces, both human and non-human, are the amount of karma that they have that they're gonna have to deal with is just really unfathomable, and it's almost like I feel bad for them.
Right, it's true.
They don't even realize. I think some of them realize it. But
think about how
karma does happen over time. You see it over time, actually.
Yeah.
Well, think about Hollywood. Like, so that how satanic the whole thing is just a big satanic realm, right?
Oh, 100.
So is Hollywood, the music industry, all the above. So imagine these celebrities, these actors and actresses meeting, how many of them are being used and paired for rituals and stuff in an entirely different level. I guarantee that's happening.
Yeah, in fact, that is. I mean, from the reports that I've had, I'm not saying I've spoken to anybody in particular in the entertainment industry, but I've spoken with people who seem to be bonded and paired with somebody who's a well-known actor, actress, and that they claim that the other actor, actress is in a secret project, in an SSP, or they meet them on these other levels where they have a twin flame connection. And I believe that there's certain family lines. This is what I discovered, that if there's a connection with we can call it a hierarchy family or an Illuminati bloodline family. And then if you're in one of those lines, you can be bonded to and twin to someone else in a family. They don't necessarily have to be famous, but sometimes they are, because a lot of those bloodlines are involved in those, careers. So someone will be bonded to them and have an astral twin flame weird thing. Or they'll remember them in a joint abduction experience or a joint ritual or something like that. But I think a lot of these things happen on a kind of on either an astral level, and there's a way they can capture your soul into false lucid dream realities and astral dimensional realms. And this has happened numerous times, where it's as if they can take your soul and then put you in these virtual reality astral realms together with others. And sometimes rituals take place in these other realms, but sometimes it's just almost like a programming thing, or they try to train you, or do almost like weird mind control things. And these things actually happen more often than not, even in the MyLab experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've heard that. Yeah.
No, I mean, no, there's a lot of elements to this that you're bringing to the table that I hadn't really considered yet, but to me, it's all entirely possible, and it is happening. And it has to be hard if somebody does discover the truth to what's going on. The complex, the trauma, it's nothing, like it can ruin you. I'm sure it could lead to suicide, if people discover what's happening. And it makes you wonder how many people is this happening to? Is everyone being used and just paired, and they're just playing with us like cats and mice, or what?
Barbara Bartholic had made statements, when she was alive, that this abduction phenomena affects all of us, not just those who actually remember their experiences or had direct contact, that it really does affect us all. There's other levels of control, manipulation, influence happening on other levels that affects us all. And if we knew, we would probably be dumbfounded. But I don't think it's necessarily should be like a negative thing, although initially it is traumatic to discover, like, wow, I've been, set up and engineered and groomed to do such and such. And some people realize that later in life, that they were, even in the Ted Rice case, he was groomed to be a light worker, to basically bring forth things that he realized later were deceptions led by a reptilian entity who was in his alien abduction experiences. So I think many people are groomed without knowing it. And if they're innocent, they're innocent. But I'd say that that's happening a lot. And it's part of a kind of subtle mind control programming happening. So
right.
I would say it is happening.
And it doesn't just stop with relationships. Like, this can be anybody having contact with a being that's communicating with them, or if you're getting information from somebody, you have to consider the possibility that it's not organic. And unfortunately, because it's so real to the point where you will drop everything in your life and go marry this person or whatever, connect with, It's so real. There's nothing that can change your mind until it's too late and you see it for yourself. So I think it's whoever's listening to this, it's something to consider. If anyone out there is having any sort of communication or contact, really have to ask yourself, where is this coming from? Is it organic? Do I really trust this?
Yeah. And, I had that experience myself, but I was married at the time when I had like the first, quote, love bite. And it was very, very powerful and spiritual, and led to like a kind of dark night of the soul. But as I worked through it, and, luckily I did a lot of prayer, and I had a lot of support and, therapy to really go through it. And then realize later that, I benefited from it ultimately by learning and doing the therapy. But I could have been thrown off in a bad place had I, not had the support and the knowledge that it was happening. So just having the knowledge that it was happening was half the thing.
Right. That's just like the awakening. Being aware is half of it, And what was I going to say? I forgot now. Keep talking.
I think because there's so much happening. Like it seems like there's a lot of focus, and I've seen this over the years. And I guess I take the position of caution based on what I had seen in the years that I've been working with people, and what I learned from Barbara Bartholic, that there's a strong effort towards, let's say, the primary alien beings that are actually perceived in the classic abductions are like the Greys or the Mantids or the Nordics or reptilians or the Dracs. But I think they can play in many different forms, and they have the ability to change their shape to do whatever they want to do.
They
so
do.
that it's possible, and we've seen it, that they can play, to make it simple, a good cop, bad cop kind of situation. And so what Barbara Bartholic found working through many cases, some had like, these horrible, diabolical, embarrassing stuff that they wouldn't want to share with anybody, right? And then some of them were like benevolent, and they were learning all these wonderful psychic exercises and light frequency this and floating objects and these wonderful things that they were feeling special about the aliens, and use them as guides to promote an environmental, positive earth, whatever. But what Barbie saw was that, there's different programs for the whole of the lot that they're working with, so that, a group of them will be used in some kind of social engagement with an environmental mission. And another one might be a spiritual channeling thing. And another one might be, it's the breeding program. And another one might be, it's all bad. And so you have to look at the whole, she used to say, you have to look at everything on the table, the whole ball of wax, and perceive this as just Illuminati will basically control the four main sectors of society, which is the religious, the scientific, the spiritual, religious, and entertainment,
financial.
Political. And so there would be all these different sectors that, and as long as they can control the information in all these different sectors and all their different groups, they've got things covered, so that if they're fighting against each other, they know because they created it. And every now and then, somebody comes up and they see like the whole game, and then they try to squash them down or neutralize them. So I think a similar thing is happening with at least the alien groups that are trying to run this farm as a loose feeding operation to keep us under control, so that as a feeding source, which is really what we discovered in the Love Bite and the Dark Cupid. It is an energy vampirism kind of thing.
Yep.
So we have to ask that question,
right?
Where in the program would I fit in if they were trying to program me or groom me for something, and I found out later what it was, what would it be? And that, I think that's the question that we need to ask, even as an experiencer, so that we could at least get to the core truth of who we are, instead of, well, my mission is this, or my mission is that. And there's a lot of people have these missions, but I think we should question it personally.
Right. Question it, and if you don't like it, fire your guides. No, but so, we're talking about all the dark aspects of this, and I want to make it clear. I definitely believe there's a light, a benevolent aspect to the ETs and some of these angelic beings, and there are guides that are helping us, and not everybody is deceiving you. The reason I wanted to have you on and bring this forward is because it happens, and I want people to understand that, to be able to look out for these things and at least consider the possibility, instead of being so quick to get excited and go with whatever experience they're having as the ultimate truth.
Yeah.
Discernment is so key.
Yeah.
So key. And that's not giving your power away to things and entities and people outside of you is very, very key as well to protect against this stuff. Yeah.
Right.
That's why I'm just going to finish that, because the discernment thing turned out to be quite a bit of a, it seems like it would be easy, but it turned out to be something that was a bit of a mystery with some. And, I wanted to delve into, like, why didn't I know at the time? Why didn't I have the discernment to know that, I was being led into this, or it was bad for me? Like, let's say in a relationship where you meet someone and you think they're right for you, and then you find out later that you just, love was blind and you didn't see the red flags, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But what I've come to know through the understanding of complex trauma and the different things that happen to someone in their coping style as they grow up through different forms of trauma is that if those traumas are still repressed, deep core shame, any kind of traumatic feeling that's basically negative and trapped in your body in amnesia, then that leads to a lack of awareness of those parts that are still shut down, so that the red flags and the awareness and the discernment is not there, so that you can fall into traps more easily. But when you work on clearing the traumas and getting more in touch with the feelings and all that, then those parts of you wake up to become more aware, and then you could just start seeing things for what they are, and then your discernment is more powerful.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, it's sometimes like full vulnerability here in my case. I saw the red flags, but the connection was so strong. It was like a drug, and I didn't care. Like I almost knew, but whatever, it literally was like a drug that I had to explore and get it out of my system. And that's,
or you made excuses for it.
Right.
Yeah.
But then when it's all over, you see, like, you kind of learn a lot about yourself, and then now you have a new tool under your belt to move forward. So it's actually like not a bad thing, a blessing in disguise. Maybe your higher self even set it up in some cases.
Yes.
For your growth. Exactly.
Right. And we have to think about that also. A lot of this stuff, I wonder how much of these scenarios we put ourselves into just as a learning experience.
Yeah. Well, I always think that the best teachers, like as I have come to learn over the years, that the best teachers were the ones who went through some of the darkest journeys, and that weren't sometimes accidental, or the people who, let's say, they were associated with the dark side and then turned over to the light and, told the truth about how all these other things happened. So I wouldn't discount, going through the experience. Sometimes it is for your ultimate wisdom and empowerment in the long run. So I can't say that it's all bad.
Right.
One of the things in the book that I said, it was better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all.
Right.
Yeah. Even if it was, a love bite.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's just a lot of times we have to learn the hard way with many things, because a lot of us are very stubborn. Basically, it comes down to that. And it's like certain things, the only way we're really going to grow and learn is to go through something like that.
Yeah. And you can't just, like, okay, you watch this episode, now you have awareness. You can't just run from every situation in fear that it might be a setup also. Like don't also live in fear. You just have to just, I don't know, ground yourself enough to, just trust yourself enough.
Yes. Self-trust. That's important. And that comes through really working on, finding the truth about what your own experience is and discovering, all those things, and then being courageous to tell the truth, and regardless, letting the chips fall where they may. And sometimes you lose a few friends, right? And
sometimes
like a lot.
Yeah.
With this stuff, I've lost a lot of friends.
Right.
But I've learned everything along the way that helped teach me more about myself, and really the depth of trauma that happened in my own life, that was family of origin trauma combined with the alien abduction and combined with some of the milabs stuff. And then some of the, what I call the interdimensional element of when you have a family member or a parent who is involved with, let's say, a high level Freemasonry, where they're obviously involved in a form of black magic and clearance work. So that's traumatic in and of itself.
Right.
Sorry.
But black magic is a whole other element to this. And it's very real, unfortunately.
It's very apparent right now with what's going on in the world right now.
The entire world's under a spell, and
exactly.
They're constantly doing rituals, and they're constantly casting.
It's so out in the open. It's not even, they're not even trying to hide it anymore.
It actually is more out in the open. It's interesting you mentioned that, because I guess I had to study a lot of narcissists and psychopathic behaviors that were run by something that you would question is even human. But one of the things that some of the, let's say the reptilian hosts hybrids, I know James might have talked about this, when they know what they are, let's say when they know they're a completely hosted hybrid entity, and they're handling someone, or they've got someone under their control, a lot of times, if they think they've got you, they'll just tell the truth. They'll let you know, and they'll spill the beans about what they are and what they're doing. And they'll be very flippant about it. Like a psychopath will just, if they think they've got the victim and the victim's already dead, they'll just tell you everything.
Right.
They don't let out. Yeah, they don't keep secrets anymore. They just.
I know of a story where that happened to somebody, and exactly that. And if it happens.
Yeah.
And the whole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're very arrogant. So that's part of it.
Yeah.
I think they can get away with that.
Right, just like the villain at the end of the movie, like, oh, you thought you had me fooled, and then really it backfires. Whatever.
Their arrogance is like their downfall usually.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's like the deep state or the cabal's downfall is like their arrogance and their it's like they're so sure that they're untouchable and they're on top that they're just like they're being so sloppy and so over the top that it's like waking so many people up. And look what's happening now. Look at the look at the trucker convoy, stuff like that.
I think
they're so confident that they just
do whatever they want.
They just throw a rubber mask on Biden, not thinking that it's going to start dripping off his face halfway through.
Exactly.
Like the ears so crooked.
Right. So I don't know. You guys have seen like all the Mission Impossible movies. They always use that mask technology. And even the most recent one, it even gets more sophisticated. And they show they're telling you that they have this technology and that they can do this and fool anybody into thinking that it's somebody else. And there's just no doubt in my mind that that's happening with Biden.
Yeah, and actually, it's training us to have to hone our own abilities of perception beyond the illusions of what you're presented, and that's a test in and of itself. To what is our perception, regardless of what's showing itself, and can we be true to what we're feeling and knowing? So
yeah, totally.
That's a test. That's truly a test.
Right.
But I think it's a blessing nowadays. I see how so much more has been disclosed about what was going on with some of these secret operations and the families running them, and then the organizations they run. But even 25 years ago, people didn't know it, and they wouldn't believe the people who had come out with some of the early MK Ultra SRA stories, and they were weren't believed, and they were truly harassed. And now many more people like, they know what the deep state is, they know what the Satanists are, they know what the adrenochrome is. Like, this has been going on for a long time, and many people just would not believe. And so I'm glad that enough people know and kind of catch on and can. It's my hope that when we can understand the behavior patterns and the signs and symptoms when these things are going on behind the scenes or in our relationships, that we're going to be able to nip it in the bud when we see that it's a problem, or navigate around it so that those people don't have power in our lives or in our organizations. So what I've been doing lately is doing more counseling and research with actually more of the psychological end of understanding complex trauma, and how that, if it's unhealed, it has a number of signatures in interpersonal relations and even, cultural traditions. Like war-torn societies will have certain family behaviors and things from the unresolved trauma. So when we understand how that works, then we could bypass it and work to heal that better.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. And going back to what you said about the adrenochrome, this is something that is scary, that I didn't know that it was legal to sell online. And I found that out. It actually is. And Alibaba.com is a website where it's sold
it's literally on there.
Yeah, it's literally on there. You type in adrenochrome and they sell it, but it's also, there's a lot of stuff that's in code there, like a harvester is like code for something or whatever it might be. Or you'll say adrenochrome, AAA battery, something. It'll be a little stuffed animal with a zipper thing. It's all like kind of like the Wayfair thing for the.
I was just gonna say, remember the Wayfair?
So somebody told me that if you type in the code on the bottom of a Pringles can, it takes you to Alibaba.com for adrenochrome. Really? So I tried it. A couple of people that I know tried it, and they didn't have any luck. Well, I was just over Christmas at my cousin's house. They had two cans of Pringles. They had a regular can and a pizza flavored can. I typed in the regular can, nothing came up. I typed in the code on the pizza flavored Pringles. This was this year over Christmas. I swear to God this happened. Type in the code on the bottom of the can. It took me to Alibaba Express website where there was adrenochrome.
Did you Google search it?
Yeah,
Or
I Google searched the code on the bottom of the pizza Pringle can. The pizza.
And the first thing that
This
comes up.
whole pizza thing, that's like really,
No, it literally took
And
me
you know
to
what pizza is code for? Yeah.
no, it literally took me
go.
to the site. It didn't bring up like search results. It took me
it
to
just took you straight there.
Alibaba Express. Yeah.
Really?
And I'm sure if you know exactly what you're looking for, you'll know what to click next. You know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Everything's
wow.
coded.
That's crazy.
Gosh.
I mean, the pizza flavor, of course, the pizza flavor.
There's no way that is a coincidence.
I don't know what made me just decide to do that. And my family's looking at me like, "What are you doing?" I'm looking at the bottom of the Pringles can. I'm like, even if I told you, you wouldn't believe me. So
it's funny.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
well, that's part of how this stuff has stayed secret for so long, because it's so crazy to most people that have no idea about any of this stuff, right? That if you try to tell people for so long, it's just sounded like you're nuts, like you're a crazy conspiracy theorist.
Like even when I got my master's degree, and this was like 1992, a little bit ago, but I remember meeting my first satanic ritual abuse, multiple personality disorder person and her sister, and her telling me all kinds of things that sounded absolutely nuts. Mm-hmm. And that was my first introduction to it. And I could barely believe the strangeness. And most people don't, but they knew about, the abducted children and the missing kids and the connection with aliens and the military. But even abduction researchers at the time would like steer away from that. And I remember that was a distinct, like, you don't talk about that, because once you talk about that, weird shit happens, or nobody believes you lose all your friends. And but there is a connection, with some of these things. And now people believe, because enough people have come out to tell the truth. But this has been going on a long time. And I'll tell you something. I shouldn't say this, but I said that my father was a Freemason, which is true. So as part of that, me growing up, one of the things that he got my sisters and I involved in was called the Job's Daughters, which is a young girls organization, like from 12 to 18, that is kind of like parallel to the Demolay for the young men. And you have to have a Masonic connection, a direct connection with a family member to join these organizations. So what I found out, of course, later in life is that many who were, let's say, SRA, MPD, DIDs, right? That means they've been trauma programmed, often through sexual abuse or other forms, with the high bloodline families that are often in these organizations, usually higher level, but then they would have certain characteristics. So later I discovered like some of them were like kind of weird, and they were MPDs, and they got like really weird, and their personalities switched when we were on some of these like Joby trips. And I only like realized later that like some of these families were like Illuminati families who were involved with, like, their kids were like a Demolay or a Job's daughter. Mm-hmm. And my dad would try to like, set you up with the Demolay and try to set you up with, one of these like Illuminati family names that I only recognized years later. He was trying to set me up with other families who were, all connected.
So was your dad aware of all the dark stuff of this, or was he kind of
I think
unknowingly?
Yeah, he was. And and he would steer us into things that almost involved, I wouldn't say sex trafficking, but tried to steer us into those kinds of groups as teenagers. But, I resisted as much as I could. But when I only discovered later, the connection between things and what some of these people do in these organizations. So, I guess I don't have a good opinion now of Freemasons because of what, my father did.
Yeah, but it's not, it's a very small percentage of Freemasons that are at the higher levels that know about this stuff even, or that participate in it, that are a part of it. And then all the rest, I mean, most Freemasons you talk to have no idea. And they would even laugh when you try to, that's all conspiracy BS. I've actually talked to people that have tried to tell me that. And I'm like, man, dude, you got to do your research, man.
Right.
But that's how it works. And then you use the lower levels to feed into it.
Exactly. It's like a need to know basis. It's compartmentalized. Until you're a certain degree, then whatever. And everybody's different. There might be a 33rd degree Mason who's not in the club. They're going to choose who they want. And it's and what's interesting is I don't know where I heard it, but I heard that Freemasonry comes from a reptilian planet, like in the Draconid star system. It was actually brought here. It was a reptilian concept. It was never a human concept.
Okay.
I don't know if that's accurate or not, and I don't even remember where I heard that.
Well, Freemasonry comes out of the Knights Templar,
right? Well,
right?
there was tons.
And that comes from the older mystery schools and stuff,
right?
So and it all just gets passed down and takes different forms. And
yeah. And
there
then
are bloodlines, though. I would say that there's something about some quote people in these projects where I swear that they're after certain ones that, or they call it the Starfire lineage, or some people call it the Isis bloodline, and others that they want for a specific reason. And there's a certain quality of some of these more ancient lines. But I think maybe now everybody is some kind of hybrid or connection between many different races. So it's really important.
Right. And so the book Planet Serpo, Secret Journey to Planet Serpo, they talk about way back in the early 1900s. This guy named Karl Haushofer was sent over to Japan, and he met with the Tibetan monastery of the Society of Little Green Men. So they were channeling the green dragons is what they thought, but it was actually a reptilian civilization that was underground there. But they would go into these caves and channel these reptilians. And anyway, they gave Karl Haushofer, however you say his name, a bunch of gifts and abilities, a gift of foresight, but they also made him aware of of their plan. They called it the 5,000-year plan. They had a plan for the takeover of not just Earth, but the solar system all the way up until the year 5,000. And then he came back with all this knowledge, all this foresight, and then they used him to groom Hitler and all that. And it was supposed to be, but then Hitler ended up screwing up the plan because he got so power hungry and he wasn't taking orders anymore. And he ended up putting Karl Haushofer in a concentration camp and his family after he was the one who groomed him.
Yep.
It's a crazy, it's a crazy history, but it all stems back from these green and black dragon societies coming back from the late 1800s, early 1900s. And the Coming Race, the book, The Coming Race, talks about the Aryan race. It was a subterranean race. Well, it only makes sense. So they're looking for a subterranean base. Why did they send a German politician over to Japan to meet with the society who's channeling beings from a subterranean race? Like there is some connection there. And, it's a crazy history. And that's really, you want to get into like the birth of the space programs and stuff. That's really where it started.
When you look at like some of these secret inner groups, what are they doing? They're like channeling these entities and finding out information, and then who are these beings really? And they always get steeped into the occult. It's kind of like the deeper roots. So that's kind of disturbing. I mean, a lot of the SSP is really blossoming in terms of many more people remembering the 20 and back, and either they must be increasing their workforce to have so many people remember, or that the traumas are not, I don't know if to say if they're not as severe, but more people seem to be remembering now than they even 15 years ago.
Well, so if the people, their tour in space, let's just say, is ending, and these people, these older guys who are coming forward now, they were some of the first run. They were like some of the first group. So maybe this technology, they were still working it out, and they had no way to really test it out and see how long the memory wipe was going to hold. So, and I think what we're seeing now, it's like kind of like the results of an experiment. They're seeing, who's remembering what, and I'm sure they're constantly altering that technology and trying to fine tune it. But there also might be like a divine part of this where these people are going to wake up regardless. They're going to remember regardless, but because of like divine intervention or something.
Remember Tony Rodriguez's story of like how he was supposed to get mind wiped and
lobotomized,
and then first the didn't work. Then they were going to just lobotomize him, and somebody erased his records in the system, and they were like, "Oh, you're not in the system, so we can't do anything." And it was like, it just looked like it was so divinely orchestrated. Like he had some higher protection
Right.
for
Yeah.
protection of him, and so he could come out with the info later and expose
the
this
same
stuff.
with Randy Kramer, I believe, that he came up with things like he was helped.
Randy,
Yeah.
And so that's why I don't think they're all under control or whatever. A lot of people are very judgmental of all of this, and they're all mind controlled, but
or it's all implanted memories and none of this is real.
Well, I think that some people maybe incarnate here knowing they're going to join the program so they can be part of the disclosure of it. I really do believe some like stuff like that's happening. Right.
Definitely.
Otherwise, how would they be able to do it? I would think that it has to be done from the inside. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to bring out these things.
Yeah, it's not black and white. There's multiple different technologies doing it. They're using for age regression, mind wiping, 20 and back technology, all that stuff. It's not just one technology, different cloning technologies, different groups of people doing all this stuff. So it's so complex, and it's so probably muddy right now. Like people probably don't even know what's going on anymore. And the amount of timelines and alters that they have created and how complicated and complex it must be, I wonder if they even have control of it anymore. And, if they're just recruiting because they need to win a war and they're not thinking about the consequences, and they probably never imagined the mess that they've made. That's the way I kind of see it.
Yeah. In fact, I became aware of something, and I can't name names, but there was someone that I knew who was involved in research like I was, who was part of a kind of a secret military, whatever, alphabet agency that were actually doing things to certain abductees in order to find out if they would fall for the manipulations and be, I don't want to say, they're basically testing people without their knowledge or consent of things, even like the love bite, for example, and then to see how they fare under certain conditions of manipulation, but to see who would be resilient, and then using those people who are resilient to those things to be better operatives in another capacity after they tested on them. So I think those kinds of things have taken place, and that might be why some people are used, because they might have qualities that they didn't even know they had, and then they were, kind of secretly recruited,
right?
And then remember later,
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Totally.
I think all of the above is happening. I don't think there's any rules for it. It's just whatever.
No, because if it's a fight, if it's truly a fight for humanity, which I believe there's some dire things that if people knew, they would be pooping their pants. So there has to be people who know how to work with this, who already have knowledge and abilities, and that they already working on it. So that's why it's not black and white, like you said. It's definitely not black and white. It's a difficult can of worms, though.
Yeah. There definitely seems to be some kind of a temporal war going on, some kind of a
100%
temporal and timeline thing going on where, and there's been many whistleblowers that have come out about that and talking about how the cabal, what they've been trying to do for a long time is to steer us onto a timeline that they want, that keeps them in control and furthers our enslavement, and they through like Looking Glass and these other technologies where they can see into the future or the probable future, it kept over and over showing their defeat and humanity's awakening and our freedom ultimately. And I heard they shut that down because of that, because they got so pissed off basically by that. So it's almost like they even know it's inevitable they're going to lose. They know that, but so what they're trying to do is just delay as long as possible is what it looks like now. To just they're like, they're not going to go down without a fight, and they're delaying and just kind of like doing everything they can to make as much chaos and suffering on their way out. And
that's what they use psychics too. Like if they can't access Project Looking Glass, I think they utilize psychics all the time.
Oh yeah.
To try to okay, if you see this, then that gives us the go to go ahead with that, because we trust your ability to look into the future
Right.
And what they'll do is they'll do something, and then they'll look to see what it creates in the future. And if it doesn't do the desired outcome, they'll adjust until it does, and all kinds of stuff like that, and do things in the past to change things, and then look to see what changed. Right. So they're constantly manipulating things.
Yeah, even, that's why the relationship thing, it makes you wonder, like the way they set you up with certain relationships to sometimes sabotage. But then I think if it's in your divine destiny and you have the right heart and spirit, things will work out for your benefit regardless.
Right. Exactly. It all comes back to the heart. And obviously people are being used on some levels, but if you have a good heart, really, that's the only thing. You can just do the best that you can do. And that's the most important thing. But I want to go back to talking about like, it's kind of like they know it's over, but they're delaying it. Well, and there's a lot of people get frustrated, like, what's taking so long? Okay, I want everyone to consider all of the manipulation and interference tactics and techniques that we talked about there in this whole episode, and apply that to the entire planet. And every politician and everybody in politics and Elon Musk, whoever, all the big richest people in the world, the people at the head of these corporations, apply all this type of interference to that. And think about how complicated it is. And you might ask, it might help make sense of things as to why it's taking so long.
People think it's just like a simple solution. Like, oh, why can't they just do a disclosure and bring out the free energy immediately? And
I don't understand why
that's simple.
I don't understand why the election audits are taking so long. Well, because there's literal entities manipulating the people who are doing the audit. Like
it's a huge, complicated swamp, basically, of a mess that we have to. Right. And the thing is like, they also, a big factor is the trauma and the destruction that would cause if they don't do this the right way, and if they rush things and just try to come out, and do all this stuff too quickly. And I think that's one of the main factors, that it's going to just have to take. I don't think it's going to take like hundreds of years, like some people think, but it's going to take longer than we all want because of the mess of it. So
yeah, but I think that it's one thing that I learned years ago, and that I strive to continue to try to do, is that when people could feel safe to talk about whatever's going on with them and how they're feeling and what they're thinking, even though it may not be the truth, but they could just run some ideas in a safe environment to talk about things and share information. This is how you discover so many things that you wouldn't be able to if it wasn't safe to talk. So this whole thing with censorship is really harming our ability to come to the knowledge of the truth and be able to apply solutions that will be, I think, better, I guess, depending on the dangerousness of it. But in general, it's good to have safe relationships and safe platforms to speak freely, and people who will abide by, basic mutual respect of not, really bad mouthing people and being really mean. And if we could make that safe for each other, even if we're not right about something, even if we're not sure, it's okay to be able to share it so that you can just process it in a safe way. And when it can be safe for all of us, we will come to conclusions and we will come to the knowledge of the truth very quickly and be able to apply solutions with compassion.
Right. When we're not being met with resistance the whole time. But it is ironic. I read something today. It's ironic that, they create Facebook and all these social media platforms to get us all to collect our data and to spy on us.
They're all honeypots.
But at the same time, now the very platform they created to spy on us and collect our data, they're kicking us off of because we're using it to spread the truth. So they suck us in to collect our data, but then we start exposing their plan.
Oh shit!
And then now they have to disable the account.
Too many people are waking up.
Yeah,
shut them all down, delete them, censor. Yeah, fact check.
That's many people know, and I think more and more people know, and they're just not going to put up with it. And
it's waking up so many people. That's the great part. And what it's doing is it's also getting everyone to realize how important free speech is, and then people are we're creating our own alternative platforms, or people are going to these alternative platforms, and then we're like, okay, screw you guys, we're gonna go where we have free speech,
right?
And aren't being told what to think. That's literally what they're doing. The dangerous information is one of their favorite buzzwords they love to use. Joe Rogan's propagating dangerous information, like they literally are saying that about him right now.
Right.
Because they're threatened because he's bigger than every mainstream media outlet.
Right.
Well,
Did you?
Funny. Yeah. People are getting more views than CNN. And it's like now the mainstream media and they're blow it cases. They're like the asshole blow it cases where it's like, okay, you know what I mean?
Right.
Everybody else is like figuring it out. Like, you're being a blow it case. Do you know what that is? I mean, that's what assholes would do in high school when they'd be like a blow it case and just like fuck up and be like the overt narcissist that everybody knows, like fucking asshole.
Right.
So it's like, well,
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Eve, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all your vast knowledge on this subject. And hopefully we can shed some light on this and put a stop to it, or at least make people aware, because that's the whole goal. Is there anything that you'd like to add, or any where can people find you?
Well, yeah, my website is evelorgen.com. And there is an Alien Love Bite Facebook group, but I eventually will do a Telegram one. And I actually do Zoom support groups for anomalous trauma and I do like 6 weeks things. And then, so I do that. And I do sessions with people. So that's what I've been doing for most of my time now. So just want to put that out. Yeah,
we'll put those links in the comments. Keep me posted on the Telegram group. That seems to be where everybody can run right now without getting censored. So it's loaded with bots, and there's a lot of things that people don't like about it, but it is a place where you can spread the truth and find some good stuff. So thank you so much, guys. Go check out her books. Alien, or I keep wanting to say Alien Love Bite.
Go to alibris.com. Both books are available in hard copy, and then you could still get a Kindle of the Love Bite. The Love Bite's going pretty high because it's kind of out of print, but I will offer half the price of what it is on Alibris for anybody who has heard this show. So you just put in the word on an email or something, and that I will honor that price.
Libris, like LIB.
Alibris.com is a used and new bookseller, kind of like
I've been to it.
Others, but I would prefer to sell through them than Amazon.
All right.
Yeah, because Love Bite was going for like $700 or more.
I've seen Amazon do that. Yeah, it's insane.
It's like like Alex Collier's books are out of print and they're all super expensive.
Right. Yeah.
Certain books, they're sought after and they're out of print. So the combination of that. Yeah.
Right. This has been awesome, guys. Don't forget, come hang out with us at the conference. We're really looking forward to it. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of this type of talk there. Just hanging out with your friends. The conference is fun, but I'm looking forward to the sky watches and the bonfires and just being able to hang out, and you can go on hikes or whatever else. It's going to be tons of fun. May 2nd through the 5th. Tickets are available, secretspaceconference.info. And don't forget about our promo codes. Omnia Radiation Balancer, if you're looking for something to put on any radiating device to protect from radiation or harmful frequencies, grab one of those. 10% off, promo code TRUTH, all caps. Hopewell Farm CBD, if you're looking for a new CBD, grab some. This stuff is absolutely amazing. I can't live without it anymore, and I mean that. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Hopewell Farm CBD, you get 10% off that with promo code Journey to Truth 10, and then 20% off all of our Teespring merch with promo code 20 and back. And all of those links are below. And that's it. Have a great night, everybody. And we will see you next time.
Thank you.
He said, listen, give me 2 years. You'll never want to come back. You'll have the adventure of a lifetime, and nobody will know you're gone.
You get deployed at 17 and a half. And now I was deployed from the New York Athletic Club. And we got actually deployed right out of the locker room from, you get beamed up to the ship, and then the ship takes off and you're gone for 20 years.
It's a very hard pill to swallow, but that's exactly how I experienced it. I was taken at 10 years old. I was taken and I was worked through several black programs. I was privately owned in the beginning. I did six or 7 years on Earth.
That's when all the stuff for the programs began for me. Specifically, the tracking that they had been doing since I was a kid, it followed me all the way through the military. And at that point, when I got to Diego Garcia, that's where I was taken off planet.
Kind of like opened that floodgate for me. And then all of these recalls started coming in, and I was just like, oh my gosh. And the way I was describing it, she's like, I've never had this with a client, but you're describing a parallel life right now.
It's a combination of human and other species. I was able to remember the name on their uniform. It's USS ARCORP. That was putting me through some kind of recruitment tests from age 3 until 12. And 12 is when I was potentially, taken.
He said, with your scores, I guarantee you'll make commander and you'll make pilot. And I said, pilot of what? And he said, 4-kilometer-long starship. He told me what was going to happen. He says, you volunteer for the program, we'll put you in, you'll do 20 years, we'll send you back in time 20 years, age regress you 20 years, wipe your memory, and you'll just wake up in bed like nothing happened.
It's almost beyond words. It's beyond comprehension of how this could happen. Whoever's masterminding this, the Air Force, working with extraterrestrials, working with a lot of pretty wild technology, which I'll also get into. It's really beyond fathomable. It's beyond fathomable.